On a quiet morning in January 2010, deep inside Iran's Natanz nuclear facility, something impossible began to happen. The centrifuges, those delicate machines that spin uranium gas at supersonic speeds to enrich it for nuclear fuel, started to behave strangely. They accelerated, they decelerated, they shook violently. One by one, they tore themselves apart. The Iranian engineers watching the control panels were baffled. The machines were destroying themselves, but the computer systems showed no errors. Everything looked normal on the screens. The software said the centrifuges were operating perfectly, even as the physical machines were grinding themselves into scrap metal. It would take months before the Iranians understood what had happened. They had been hit by Stuxnet, the world's first true cyber weapon. It was a piece of malware so sophisticated that it didn't just steal data or crash computers, it invaded the industrial control systems, learned how the centrifuges operated, and then quietly sabotaged them while lying to the monitoring systems. It was sabotage written in code, delivered through infected USB drives, and it set Iran's nuclear program back by years. The operation had no official name, no government claimed responsibility. But everyone knew who had done it. The United States, working with Israel, had just demonstrated a new form of warfare. They had reached into a fortified facility buried underground in a hostile nation and destroyed its most sensitive equipment without firing a single shot. This was not the beginning of America's campaign to stop Iran from getting the bomb. It was just one chapter in a decades-long shadow war, a conflict fought with sanctions and sabotage, with assassinations and airstrikes, with diplomacy backed by the constant threat of annihilation. To understand why the United States has been so obsessed with stopping Iran's nuclear ambitions, we need to go back to the beginning, back to when Iran and America were not enemies, but partners. In 1953, the CIA orchestrated a coup that overthrew Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh and reinstalled the Shah, a monarch who would rule as a dictator friendly to Western interests. For the next 25 years, Iran under the Shah was America's closest ally in the Middle East. Tehran was a bulwark against Soviet influence. It was a stable source of oil, and crucially, it was a customer. The Shah wanted to modernize Iran. He wanted to turn his country into a regional superpower, and he wanted nuclear technology. The Americans were happy to help. In the 1970s, under the Atoms for Peace program, the United States helped Iran build its first nuclear reactors. American companies signed contracts worth billions. MIT trained Iranian nuclear scientists. The Ford administration even agreed to sell Iran a complete nuclear fuel cycle, which included the ability to reprocess plutonium, the very material needed to build a bomb. Henry Kissinger, the Secretary of State, argued that a strong nuclear-capable Iran would be a pillar of stability in the Gulf. The irony is almost painful. The nuclear program that the United States would spend the next 4 decades trying to destroy was a program that America itself had helped to create. Then came 1979. The Iranian Revolution overthrew the Shah. The American embassy in Tehran was seized. 52 Americans were taken hostage for 444 days. The humiliation was broadcast on television every night. A new government took power, led by Ayatollah Khomeini, a theocratic regime that declared America the Great Satan. Overnight, Iran transformed from ally to enemy, and suddenly, the nuclear program that had been encouraged became a nightmare scenario. The Iranians didn't immediately restart their nuclear ambitions. The revolution plunged the country into chaos and then into war. In 1980, Saddam Hussein's Iraq invaded Iran, launching an 8-year war of attrition that would kill over 1 million people. During that war, Iraq used chemical weapons against Iranian soldiers and Iranian civilians, mustard gas, nerve agents. It was a horror show. The Iranians appealed to the United Nations. They appealed to the world. They were ignored. The international community, including the United States, stayed silent. Some Western countries even sold Iraq the precursors for those chemical weapons. That experience left a scar on the Iranian psyche. The lesson they learned was brutal and simple. When you're attacked, no one will help you. The only guarantee of survival is power, the ability to retaliate, the ability to deter. After the war ended in 1988, the Iranian leadership made a decision. They would restart the nuclear program, not for energy, though that was the official story, but for leverage, for respect, for the ultimate insurance policy against invasion. Through the 1990s, Iran quietly rebuilt its program. They purchased equipment on the black market. They worked with Pakistan's A.Q. Khan, the father of the Islamic bomb, who sold nuclear secrets like a salesman peddling watches. The Iranians built centrifuge cascades at secret sites. They enriched uranium in hidden facilities. The CIA knew something was happening, but the picture was incomplete. Iran was being careful. They were playing the long game. Then came September 11th, 2001. The world changed. The United States, traumatized and furious, launched its war on terror. Afghanistan was invaded. Iraq was next. And in 2002, an Iranian dissident group revealed the existence of 2 secret nuclear sites in Iran, Natanz and Iraq. The evidence was damning: satellite photos, technical blueprints. The Iranians had been lying to the International Atomic Energy Agency for years. They had been building a covert nuclear weapons program. The revelation came at the worst possible time for Iran. American troops were now on both their eastern and western borders, in Afghanistan and Iraq. Regime change was in the air. President George W. Bush had declared Iran part of the axis of evil. There was serious talk in Washington about military strikes, about taking out the nuclear sites with bunker-buster bombs before it was too late. The Iranians watched Iraq descend into chaos and understood the message: cooperate or be destroyed. In 2003, Iran agreed to suspend its enrichment activities and allow intrusive inspections by the IAEA. It was a tactical retreat, a way to buy time while the Americans were distracted in Iraq. But the Europeans, led by Britain, France, and Germany, believed they could negotiate a permanent deal. They offered Iran economic incentives, trade deals, and security guarantees in exchange for abandoning the nuclear weapons program. The talks dragged on for years. The Iranians made promises. They broke promises. They played for time. They enriched a little, then stopped, then started again. The Americans watched with growing frustration. The Bush administration believed the Iranians were negotiating in bad faith, and they were right. The Iranian strategy was transparent: talk to the Europeans, keep the program alive, and wait for the Americans to leave Iraq. Wait for the political will in Washington to crumble. It was a bet that time was on their side. But while the diplomats talked, something else was happening in the shadows. In 2007, the United States and Israel launched Operation Orchard, a test run. Israeli fighter jets destroyed a suspected nuclear reactor in Syria that had been built with North Korean help. The raid was surgical, devastating, and the international community barely blinked. It was a message to Tehran: we can reach you. And when the diplomacy failed, when Iran restarted full-scale enrichment, in 2006, the Americans decided to escalate. The first weapon was economic. The United States imposed sanctions, not just on Iran, but on any country or company that did business with Iran's nuclear program. They targeted Iran's banks, cutting them off from the global financial system. They pressured European companies to abandon contracts. They sanctioned Iran's oil exports, the lifeblood of the economy. The goal was to strangle Iran economically, to make the cost of the nuclear program unbearable. The sanctions worked, but slowly. The Iranian rial collapsed. Inflation soared. Medicine became scarce. But the nuclear program continued. The Iranian leadership calculated that national pride and security were worth the economic pain. So the Americans turned to sabotage. Stuxnet was just the beginning. There were reports of mysterious explosions at Iranian military sites. A massive blast at a missile base in 2011 killed a senior Revolutionary Guard commander. Was it an accident, or was it Mossad? No one claimed responsibility, but the pattern was clear. Critical facilities were being targeted. Key personnel were disappearing. And then came the assassinations. Between 2010 and 2012, 4 Iranian nuclear scientists were killed. Motorcyclists pulled up next to their cars in Tehran traffic and attached magnetic bombs to the doors. The bombs detonated seconds later. The scientists died in front of their families. The operations were brazen, executed in broad daylight in the heart of the Iranian capital. The Iranians blamed Israel and the United States, neither confirmed nor denied. But the message was unmistakable. If you work on this program, you are a target. Your expertise makes you a combatant in an invisible war. The Shadow War had rules, unwritten but understood. No direct military confrontation, no open declarations, just pressure, relentless and escalating, designed to make the nuclear program too expensive, too dangerous, too bloody to continue. But Iran refused to bend. The program became a matter of national sovereignty. To give it up would be to submit, and submission was unthinkable. By 2013, the situation had reached a stalemate. Iran was advancing, but slowly bleeding resources and people. The United States was containing them, but not stopping them. The risk of miscalculation was growing. A single mistake, a misread signal could trigger a regional war that no one wanted. And then the political landscape shifted. In Iran, Hassan Rouhani, a relative moderate, was elected president. He had a mandate to negotiate, to ease the sanctions that were crushing the Iranian people. In Washington, Barack Obama had been re-elected. He believed that the only way to permanently stop Iran's nuclear program was through diplomacy, not war. The result was the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal, signed in 2015. It was the most complex arms control agreement in modern history. Iran agreed to dismantle 2/3 of its centrifuges. It agreed to ship out 98% of its enriched uranium stockpile. It agreed to convert its heavy water reactor at Arak so it could not produce weapons-grade plutonium. It agreed to submit to the most intrusive inspection regime ever designed. In exchange, the sanctions would be lifted. For the Americans, it was a gamble. The deal didn't dismantle Iran's nuclear program permanently. It froze it for 10 to 15 years. The bet was that a decade of engagement, of trade and connection to the global economy, would moderate Iran, that the regime would change, or at least its behavior would. For Iran, it was a victory. They kept the program alive. They kept the knowledge, they kept the infrastructure, and they got the sanctions relief that their economy desperately needed. But the deal was fragile. It was built on distrust, managed by verification. And in 2018, President Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the agreement. He called it the worst deal ever negotiated. He reimposed sanctions, the harshest ever, aiming for maximum pressure. The goal was to force Iran back to the table to negotiate a better deal, one that would also address Iran's ballistic missile program and its support for militant groups across the region. The Iranians responded by slowly violating the limits of the deal. They enriched uranium to higher levels. They installed advanced centrifuges. They restricted access to inspectors. The deal was collapsing and the shadow war reignited. In 2020, Israel assassinated Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, the scientist known as the father of Iran's nuclear weapons program. He was killed by a remote-controlled machine gun operated via satellite while driving on a highway outside Tehran. The operation was so precise, so technologically advanced, that it read like science fiction. It was a demonstration of capability, a reminder that Iran's most protected individuals were vulnerable. Today, the question remains unresolved. Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than it has ever been. By some estimates, they are weeks away from having enough weapons-grade uranium for a bomb, though building a deliverable warhead would take longer. The Biden administration tried to revive the nuclear deal, but the talks stalled. The Iranians demand guarantees that no future president will withdraw again. The Americans demand stricter terms. Neither side trusts the other, and so the cycle continues. The story of why the U.S. never let Iran have nuclear weapons is not a story of victory. It's a story of containment, of holding the line without ever crossing it into open war. It's a story shaped by history, by the memory of the Shah's overthrow, by the hostage crisis, by decades of mutual hostility. It's a story driven by fear, the fear that a nuclear-armed Iran would be uncontainable, that it would trigger a regional arms race, that Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey would all seek their own bombs, that the Middle East would become a tinderbox where one miscalculation could lead to nuclear war. But it's also a story shaped by Iran's own fears. The fear of invasion, the fear of regime change, the fear that without the ultimate deterrent, they are vulnerable to the same fate as Iraq or Libya, countries that gave up their weapons programs and were later destroyed. For Iran, the nuclear program is not about aggression, it's about survival. It's about never again being defenseless when the world turns its back. And so the shadow war grinds on. Sanctions tighten and loosen. Sabotage operations succeed and fail. Diplomats talk and walk away. The centrifuges spin in the dark, and both sides calculate the cost of action against the cost of restraint. The United States has never let Iran have nuclear weapons, not because it was easy, but because the alternative was unthinkable. And Iran has never fully abandoned the program, not because it wants war, but because in a world where power is the only currency that matters, the bomb is the ultimate insurance policy. This is not a story with an ending. It's a story still being written, and the question that haunts Washington and Tehran alike is simple. How long can this game continue before someone makes a move they can't take back?